What's going on, you guys? It's Ariel here, and welcome back to the podcast. Now, before we get into things with our lovely guest, Ibantis. Ibantis, how are you this evening? Welcome in.
Doing excellent. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I have something to share with you guys, a bit of an announcement. The Casual Nerd podcast is not going to be named the Casual Nerd anymore. I completely rebranded. A funny story, I found out there was a clothing store named the Casual Nerd, so I don't want to run into any copyrights.
Would not have guessed that, yeah.
Yeah, so as soon as I found that out, plus a whole host of different podcasts that are named The Casual Nerd, I decided to go with the new podcast. Drum roll, please. Fast-paced drumming.
I was going to say, everybody knows not to drum a mic, so I won't.
The podcast name is now called The Gamer's Respite, where we are going to be discussing everything and anything gaming-related, souls, you name it, and maybe food. I don't know. Pineapple on pizza? Yay or nay?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, all right, you're good. I like that. Good. So we're going to be covering all that kind of stuff. I'm really happy with the name. Join me on this adventure of this entire rebranding of The Gamer's Respite. I have to catch myself each time I want to call it The Casual Nerd now.
It'll take a minute. I went through a rebranding at one point too, so on our podcast that we do, so it happens.
Yeah, but yeah. This is going to be amazing. Thank you so much for coming by, Abantis. If you guys know him, if you guys don't know him, actually, I was about to say, he is the father of guides right now, besides Fighting Cowboy on YouTube. I honestly know it's true, because when I looked at a lot of your guides, they're very thorough, they're to the point, but they also give a lot of information, so.
I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, of course. Now, for those of you who are living under a rock for God knows how long, Abantis, why don't you tell people about the content that you do and where people can find you at?
Yeah, so, I'm Ibantis everywhere. It's Ebontis. If you see the cheetah logo, that's me. It is a cheetah, it is not a leopard, it is nothing, it is a cheetah. There is a distinction to that, so if you ever wonder, it's typically the black tears under the eyes are the one easy thing to spot them by, besides the spots look very different. I looked up a lot of things about cheetahs since it was my logo, so I kind of figured out quite a few things there. But outside of that, I started covering a lot of Destiny 2, did that, and Destiny 1. Trying to even think, I've been doing this for a while, so sometimes I forget where the transition happened. It probably was D1 before it went to Destiny 2. Did that for a long time. Destiny's going through what it's going through for the past couple of years, and it's also just like, I've always enjoyed a ton of games, just a wide variety from NBA Jam Tournament to Chrono Trigger, shout out to my favorite game, and everything else in between, Mega Man and Dark Souls and just so much stuff. And there have been so many games that I've missed over the years, and in the past 2-ish or more, 2-3, I've started to venture out and cover other games and actually had success doing certain ones. Kind of found a couple of guide styles that actually have a bit of a niche, and then just kind of as Destiny has slowly whittled down, I've tried to branch out more and hopefully not pestered too many PR reps to be able to cover other things, of which we all know what that's like if you've done it. And at this point, just trying to cover any game that I can get my hands on, typically because I just enjoy gaming as a whole. I do enjoy the action genre, but I've played just about everything at some point. I played a good amount of Madden at some point in my life. I've played some sim games, and then I've played, it's like I've covered like SimCity and City Skylines. I'd like old SimCity, like we're talking older than some people who know what games are. But
that makes me feel old just hearing it.
Oh no, I'm still probably older than you, even if I don't look it. So I'll take it.
Wait, I have to ask if you're okay with sharing, because I turned 43 this year.
Oh, I got you well cleared.
Wait, I thought you were in your 30s too. Okay, vampire. I'm calling it right now.
No, I'm 41, so.
Oh, okay.
I just shaved, so it helps.
It has to do with the shave.
So, yeah, I've been gaming for a long time, and it was 8-bit Nintendo and everything since then. So that's how long I've been playing. So, yeah, at this point, it's just like, I typically have found that I do well at guides, and people tend to like my style. Not everybody. I cover things in depth, as you said, kind of before the show started. I go in depth. I cover a lot of detail. I do like visual walkthroughs as opposed to just like, quick cuts in between things. If I do a guide on an exotic mission in Destiny, you're going to see just about everything to where you could almost walk along with it. But there's a set of an audience that appreciates that. So I tend to go much more in depth, but it seems to have worked for some. So I will kind of keep doing what I'm doing for now.
That's really awesome. And you've amassed such an amazing community. I mean, watching the comments underneath a lot of your videos, even when your videos come out, you don't really get too much. I mean, you very seldom do you get, oh, first, but instead you'll get more of the participating comments, which is every YouTuber's dream, right? To get those comments that are just like, wow, we really enjoyed this, or it was really informative. And as someone who's new to doing guides since, I want to say, the beginning of last year, a lot of inspiration has come from so many different YouTubers to try to nail down like how to do guides properly, but also how to stand out.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you and I have played Souls games, so it's like we know there's the big ones who cover that out there, and it's like whether you're going to do yours, and some of the ones that I've done have been a little bit different, but if I dive into something like Monster Hunter Wilds, which we'll talk about later in the show, there are a ton of creators for that. They even have a creator for every single weapon, and it's like trying to stand out in that crowd is not an easy thing, but all I can do is try and make my best stuff and hope for the best. And I don't know, there's one format that I found that works, and then we'll see what goes from there. But crossing fingers, yeah.
That really is exciting, though, because it's like I remember whenever people were talking in the Souls community, especially in Bloodborne, actually, a lot of people are having issues with parrying. And that's where I found a lot of my guide style, was showing people how to parry. At first it was with Father Gascoigne, and then I actually have 2 parrying guides coming out at the end of this week for Orphan of Cause and Lady Maria.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, I never played the DLC for Bloodborne, mostly because I've been waiting for a remaster. And I heard the Orphan is like one of the hardest bosses, if not. But the game that actually like really forced me to parry was Sekiro, and it took I'm gonna probably butcher his name, Genichiro or something. Is that?
Yeah, Genichiro. Yeah.
That's the boss that made me like have to like kind of learn it, but also flip the switch for the game. And then since then, like Lies of P was absolutely fantastic. And the Overture's coming. I saw that as a prequel. Lies of P was one of the best in non-From games that I've played in quite a long time. So that was
right.
So you had like Neo and that whole series that's had like Neo 1, Neo 2. We had Wolong. Is that right? No, that different game.
Destiny.
Yeah, and then I was thinking Black Myth Wukong, but I got that confused.
Okay.
That was actually very good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we had that whole series. But outside of like those two that had been doing it for a while, there were a couple others, and then Lies of P came in and just surprised the crap out of me. So.
It was so shocking to me too, because when I played it, I distinctly remember telling my audience that this is the closest I feel like a Souls-like has come to being an actual Souls-like.
Absolutely. Yeah, they figured, and even just the vibe, the atmosphere and stuff, they had a little bit of Bloodborne, but man, the way they played into the Pinocchio type stuff worked all the way through. It was, yeah, I'm pumped for that one, so I'll try and contain my excitement, yes.
Oh my gosh, even the music, I'm just like, I'm a music junkie whenever it comes to certain games, so hearing, like, you could play like certain records while you were in your respite area, and I'm just like, oh, this is amazing, I need to just have this entire record on repeat right now.
Good stuff in there, absolutely.
But to get into the meat of the topics, we are going to go in first to discuss the PlayStation Direct, which, depending on who you are, it could have gone either really, really badly, really, really good, or kind of like, there are some things that you like, but most of it's just, nah. Okay, Lies of P wins. But I want to know,
I was going to ask you. No,
okay.
First, just overall, like 30,000 foot view. Are you a thumbs up, thumbs down, or the gladiator in the middle?
Oh, I'm a thumbs up. I loved it.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I was like, I can understand where not every game is going to land with every person. Totally understand that. Like, whether it's Shinobi, which to me looks kind of cool, or Directive, or sometimes there's certain ones like Nintendo conferences especially, but sometimes the PlayStation ones too. There's a chunk of some of those directs or whatever they do. I understand I am not the audience for those sometimes. I'm like, you are speaking to a different wheelhouse, and it's like, that's not for me. This one honestly felt like I didn't have too many of those. This was I thought generally a good show overall. Some nice surprises, some unique ones, but overall I had a good time. So were you curious? Sorry, now you can ask your question.
No, I was actually curious. You answered my question that I was going to ask, so darn you. I was actually going
It's not my first podcast, so sorry.
No, it's actually kind of funny though. I do the same. If I'm ever on someone else's podcast, I'll just like get ahead of the question and be like, "Oh wait, you're about to ask. Never mind. Okay."
Yep.
So no, but I was in general going to ask, like, what did you think of the direction of the PlayStation Direct? Because I know that it, oddly enough, and I don't see this too often with directs anymore, besides Xbox, for example, I'll see like I saw like a great variety of games that everyone is going to want to sink their teeth into. Like Nintendo had their games. You had Saros, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Mm-hmm. You had so many different, you had Liza P. You had so many different JRPGs that were coming out. There was such a great mixture, and I want to know, do you think that that's going to be a sticking point for future directs to come?
I think the variety serves this state of play very well because of the state I think that they're in. We've had the cancellations of some live service. We're still not entirely sure. And also something like a state of play versus if they do a summer showcase, which may or may not happen by rumors, that is where you would potentially see your bigger tent poles, whether it's Ghost of Yotei, which the whole half of the year, second half of the year is empty until Grand Theft Auto plants its flag. So everybody's just waiting for that. But it's like Ghost of Yotei is probably going to be somewhere around there. And then we've also got Wolverine, which everybody's wondering where it's at. So you've got both of those that are going to be big tent poles. And typically those, I think, would be in a showcase if they can either find a way to do it or fill it with more demo footage potentially. But the fact that there was, because they said it was like a 40-something minute show, and they were going game. I'm like, they were like almost game every 2 minutes or something. I think there was one point they counted like 30 some odd games. So it's just the pacing of it I enjoyed, because if it wasn't something that clicked with you, it didn't take long to move on to the next thing and see if that was going to work. So I thought the pacing was actually generally good. Not every game is going to land with every person, but there were quite a few surprises and stuff that actually, I think, kept the mixing back and forth going that actually, for me, worked a lot. I just don't know if they're always going to have this many to pick from as well. So I don't know if you're always going to have like 38 games in 44 minutes or something. That was kind of a shock. So
yeah, I remember whenever I filmed my reaction video to it, I was really surprised. It was kind of just like a marathon of where, like you said, it just kept going and going. And I thought, this is like a track meet or something right now, you know?
Yeah, they really did not slow down. It was just open the fire hose and go.
Yeah. So this is one of the conversations I was the most excited to have with you, because we had a discussion. I believe it was no, it wasn't on Bluesky. It was on Twitter that we shared both of our mutual love for Returnal. And indeed. I want to get into this conversation with you right now about discussing not only fangirling, inclusion of fangirling, about Saros, because when I first saw that trailer, I wasn't sure exactly the route in which things were going to go, because, okay, we see a guy on the beach. We see this monster coming out of the water. As soon as I saw the orbs, I knew something Returnal was going to happen.
No, as soon as it was the spiral orbs, I was like, oh, there's the Returnal bullet hell. I knew, same thing. That was the frame that they did for everybody. But it was just the fidelity, and then seeing, obviously, Rahul there as, you know, the actor. He's been in multiple stuff. I've seen him on lots of podcasts now, between Skill Up and then GameSpot and all the other places that I've seen him. I was like, oh, I recognize that face from multiple things. Bless you. I have so much sinus issues. No, I have more sinus issues than most people ever know of, so I feel your pain.
No, it's been constant all day today. I was going back and forth between really, really cold of upstate New York to inside where it's warm.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, we're actually pretty cold here I'm in Dallas, Texas, but it's like we're sub-freezing, which not even normal for us, so we're actually a little cold too.
You guys see me sneezing and just, suffering throughout the podcast. It's my nose, okay?
It happens. No, I was pumped. First, I was just like, okay, first it was PlayStation Studios, so that was the first sign. I was like, what are we getting? And then when it popped up, I was like, this doesn't look like anything I've remotely heard anything about. And then it was just kind of the teases of what was coming, and then potentially, and then as soon as it was the reflection in the helmet, same thing you saw, the spiraling, I was like, oh, we're back. And I knew as soon as you did, it was just like, and Housemarque is here. Because we knew after Returnal, they were doing something new. And I think a lot of people had said, well, why not do Returnal 2? Because it was so good. And this seems like it's going to be the spiritual successor without putting a 2 on the box. And minus a couple changes, it sounds like that some of your deaths will have more permanent circumstances to kind of the roguelike nature. They haven't told a ton yet, but overall, I'm really excited. It looks very, very cool.
I
What about you?
loved how the first game actually really solidified its place in the roguelite situation because there was so many things, there were questions. Like that was what besides Hades, that was my first kind of roguelite game that I really dove into. And for me I thought it had such a soul of a Souls game, if you will, because it had these different kind of I want to say rest areas, but to me it was more like suffer zones where you go and you're instantly thrown into the mosh pit after you leave that resting area. And there's so many locations that change throughout the world, and I was not used to that. When I did my playthrough, actually, on my other channel, Huggable Hipster, there were so many avenues of where your play style is going to be entirely different from someone else's. It's going to go about in a completely different way, and that's what I love about these types of games, of where when you're playing as her, you have such a unique experience. And like, I think going in and seeing the story through the houses, that was one of my favorite parts, because for me, psychology in gaming is some of my favorite things.
Yeah, no, the combat alone depended on what weapon you got on the run. And the one run that I finished, I was kind of a little surprised with the weapon I ended up using, but there was definite different playstyles in how you kind of handled each encounter depending on what weapon loadout you got and stuff as you progressed along. But I can't even remember what it was now when I did it, but those were not short runs. That is one of the things about Returnal. I think some people like the idea of it, but even once you get to the point where you could skip the first three and kind of jump through, and then you would get to the Oregon, which is freaking amazing. Just still, even doing 4, 5, and 6, still a long run. When I ended up streaming that side of it, like once you get to the point where you can know to skip, it's still not a short run to even do the second half of the game, but just getting used to it is so hard. So it is a very daunting game. So I will be curious if they make it a bit more approachable, a bit more progression to it. I will be curious kind of how they handle things, because there wasn't a lot of progression between runs. There really wasn't. There was a little, but not much. Yeah.
It got to a point of where if you saw some of the story, you wouldn't get much progression until after you completed a boss or after you got like a certain item or something like that. I remember the audio tapes that you would get. I would always look forward to those because it would give me more of the story. I did want to ask, actually, what was your favorite boss from Returnal?
I think I got to go with the Oregon. It was just so memorable. 4. I mean, it was the 4th biome when you get there, and then just it was the thematic nature. Like, the end is cool, just due to more of the scale, I would say. First boss, definitely more of a warm-up, but the 4th one sticks, just because the arena and then just the whole... And the music is building as you're actually getting up there, too. So I think it's got to be 4 for that game.
Oh, nice. You see, for me, aesthetically, the first boss, music-wise, the Oregon.
Okay.
That was
fair.
Hands down, so good. Like I still listen to to Bobby Krillick's entire album that he did for that for the game. It's one of those more kind of iconic albums, I would say, for music besides Bloodborne, because you have that build up throughout the time where you're climbing up that spiral to get to the boss, and you hear it's just so like overpowering and loud.
It's loud, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Actually, the other question I had for Returnal was, did you do the DLC for that game, or did you like see any of the story for that attached?
I never got back to. I went through most of the main story. I didn't do the DLC piece with that was the tower, or what was? I'm trying to remember. What was the DLC for that?
The Tower of Sisyphus.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I got partial way through the tower a little bit. It just became a little bit too daunting, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, I mean the game's hard enough, and I was like, all right, I beat it, and then the DLC came out, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know if I have more of this in me. I was happy I actually finished it at all. That was one of those that was rather challenging.
Yeah, that's how I felt too, and I thought, am I really going to record a playthrough of this game right now? Like, this is going to take forever. Like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah. A lot of capture footage goes into that.
Right, exactly. Oh
there's
my gosh.
There's that little transition edit in there. Don't mind that one. Just a death you don't need to see. No big deal.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Edits, they happen.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. And you see, this is why I'm a full-time video editor. I do the job that people hate.
Yes. Somebody's got to do it.
So yeah, no, actually, I think, what was it? One person IRL said, "You are the plumber of the gaming community." I was like, ouch, but also true.
Yeah. That's fair.
Thanks, maybe. I'm
That's
not
fair,
sure. I'll have to
yeah.
get back to you on that one.
Yeah. Not going to claim to have like crazy editing skills. Mine is just function to get stuff done. Yours far beyond what I do, I'm sure. So
It's, in all honesty, I've been doing this professionally for I think the past almost 9 years now.
yeah,
Jesus
I was going to
Christ,
say
I feel
Game
old.
Informer
God.
before Windows Central, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
small
rest in peace.
platforms, right? Yeah, seriously.
Oh, so one of the next topics I wanted to dive into I can't talk. That's gonna be a clip. Into you with. That's not even a word. What is that? There's so many games that are coming out. Like, it's impossible to keep track of them all. I feel like the way in which reviewers have to go about just doing each deadline after each deadline, it makes it kind of a little bit over the top sometimes. So how do you parse?
Terrible, like this one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that was one of my questions of how do you decide how you're going to either cover a game, have one for enjoyment, or just say no, I'm not covering this one.
Enjoying a game. What is that all about?
Right.
No, I mean sometimes I will force myself to. Typically, the games that I stream for fun are ones that I don't cover. Like if it's a God of War, there's not much content that I'm probably going to make about that. One, Sony's a hard, castle to get into per se for early access for like a review. So if I was actually going to get a chance to cover it, I feel like I'm already behind the curve playing at launch with everybody else. But two, a lot of it is going through experiencing the story and stuff like that. So when it is stuff to cover, for me, it's typically anything where there's a tutorial, a guide, something that makes sense for me. Something like, I was looking through the list. Directive 8020, for example. There's not much I'm really going to be able to do for a guide there. Would be a cool experience. It's a dark picture thing, but it's like not much that I would be able to get out of that. Like Darwin's Tale, that would just be a fun game. That one actually looks like a blast. But Liza P or Tides of Annihilation is one of them. Hell is Us is another one. So yeah, we've got dates on a few. So I mean, for me, a couple of the big ones that at least caught my eye, stuff I want to play, stuff I want to cover. Hell is Us was one of them. I still don't know too much. I know it's combat, action, adventure. Looks very dark and grim, but they still have kept a lot of it quiet, which I'm okay with. Because so far, what I've seen has kind of piqued my interest. But at some point, we are going to need that kind of in-depth gameplay. Really dive in so we kind of know what we're getting into. Liza P is like, of course, I'm going to play that. Lost Soul aside, the fact that that's made by one person somehow. Now, granted, I don't know if there's outsourcing or anything else, but that one actually being on May 30th is not the best timing, and I really hope they move that. Because Elden Ring Night Ring is the same day. Yeah.
I forgot.
So, no, like, for whoever, like, for Ulti Zero games, like, move. Please move somewhere else for your sake. Just bump it, like, 3 weeks into June, something like that. Let the hype of that die down. Give yourself a chance. Please don't try and do that on the same day. And that's one of the things for me that I've always wondered. I've talked to some PR reps and stuff like that, and picking a release day is never easy. But at some point, and we're finally seeing this actually come to fruition with Grand Theft Auto 6, there is a giant, vague cloud around the second half of the year because they've claimed fall. And everybody's like, all right, well, we're not going to claim the date. They would prefer to claim it later once they pick a date. And then some people think it's going to get delayed. So it's all just a bit of a mess right now. But yeah, like Lost Soul aside, for whatever reason, that game just looks, high sci-fi action adventure kind of thing. And of course, those look fun. we do enjoy our action games. So that one's probably not much of a question. Mind's Eye.
It looked really fun for me. Like, I saw like the creature design and everything, and it looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that one I see a little bit more. I saw like, hey, if you're interested in this, I was like, yes, I am. Go make sure you reach out to the right people. So it's one of those that continues to keep it the interest of intrigue with what I've seen. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
That's going to be exciting to see how all of these release dates pan out, because much like I want to see the year that Alan Wake 2 arrived, as well as it was in October alongside the same month as Spider-Man 2. And this is reminding me of that same chaos that happened, because we had so many games releasing that year and it was impossible to keep track of everything. And I feel like it's going to be, excuse my language, I might have to bleep this out, a reviewer cluster right now.
Oh, that's totally fair.
It's going to be chaos. And I know that for, since I do freelance gaming journalism on my end, it is going to be either hell on earth or absolute bliss, because we're either going to be told to review one or two things at the most, or I'm going to have to review multiple things on my end that it's not going to be fun for my brain.
No, it's hard to really do a review justice. If you like something like Avowed, you might see it's, depending on your playstyle especially, is kind of a thing too. Do you want to review it the way you do it, or do you want to try and golden path it and finish it quickly? All of those can kind of go into how much time you put into something, and then depending on what you're promised versus, hey, I explored the game and now it's 50 hours. This is way bigger than I thought it was. Didn't leave myself enough time. All of that kind of comes into play. But yeah, when months like February or now the end of May, we've got Dune: The Dark Ages on the 15th. The 20th, what is on the 20th? Oh, it just got announced. Dune Awakening, that's on the 20th now on PC.
I forgot about that.
And then now we've got Elden Ring, Night Ring on the 30th, and then you've got Lost Soul Aside. So I'm like, Lost Soul Aside, you should move. Just pick a different day. But even just those three together, you can only pick one as a person. You can't cover likely all three of those in any reasonable, like, either not going to be timely or it's just not going to be like quality. And that's kind of the thing you have to trade back and forth. And that's what kind of sucks. Like this month, for example, it's like I got a chance to play Avowed, so I did do that. Yeah, I ended up I think it was about right around 50 hours for me too, and I didn't 100% it. I probably did like 75, 80%. I did way more than Golden Path, but I didn't do every single treasure map and side quest and all that stuff. But I did a lot of them, a lot of the companion stuff for sure. And, I ended up, for me, I've tried to go for a review score. It actually works pretty well because I appreciate the IGN numerical listings for whole numbers because they have the words that go with them. So it's kind of appreciative to just be like, okay, this is actually what they're saying. And it's like, I kind of get what the vibe of what you're going for here. Sometimes I feel like I'm like smack in the middle. So that's always a little bit difficult on some. My wife's always annoyed. She's like, is it another 7? I'm like, no. There's a reason there are a lot of those, but it's a thing. So.
See, now you're going to have to give it a higher score just to be like, actually, it's an 8.5.
I told myself it was an 8. Like, it is, for me, it was an 8, and it ended up being like an 80, 81. So I think average-wise, like, I was pretty on the nose. And I could see most of the review scores. That's one of the things I really try and do when I'm working on any of them is, like, whether I jump into a new game or something like that. Like, when you're on before I actually got early access to things, as I was just playing Destiny or playing other games, typically you would have heard what the reviews are beforehand. It is a different story to play in your own bubble, in your head, no real communication with other people. Now at least I've got a couple contacts who are potentially with early access, so I can be like, hey, how's this going? Or a little bit. But you're still generally in your own head about what you think about it. And then, like, if you hit that publish, you schedule it for embargo or whatever, then you're like, well, how did I do compared to everybody else? And there's typically a bit of a range. Sometimes you're a little higher, sometimes you're a little lower. My journey through Starfield review score was a hell of a roller coaster. So, I mean, it can be all over the place. And that's kind of why, for me, it's, I don't know, it's the 7, everybody gives that a really hard time, but there's a reason, especially like for IGN, if they're not going to round up, if they're going to round, there's a lot of things that can be a 75, 79, 78, but if you don't think it justifies the definition of great, good is not a bad score, even though everybody like fears the 70s, but it's just the way like the public sees a 7 be like, oh no, it's a 7. It's a good game. We have the whole, I think the internet and public has way too high a standard sometimes. Like, I'll get crucified in the comments per se, but it's like there were so many games I've played over the years that I think a good game there's nothing wrong with. But for now, if it's not a banger, it's really hard to get like into the zeitgeist per se, unless it's just this amazing, spectacular thing. It's kind of hard.
It's true, and I feel like, no offense to gamers, but a lot of them are spoiled with the technology. So I feel like they expect something massively incredible, and then when they get something that is actually fantastic, I feel like what they have been spoiled with is kind of doing this blocking on the vision a little bit, and they're just like, well, I expected this to be 4K, a bajillion frames per second. What are you talking about? It's like, no, it's like, Bloodborne is still fantastic, and it's almost 10 years without a single word. Sony.
I know, they're killing me, seriously. That's why I haven't played. That's the reason I never played the DLC. I waited long enough, and then I got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to go back and play it until they give me a better version. Just not going to do it. So I'm holding out at some point that in case of emergency glass has got to get broken by somebody, and at some point that's going to get at least like the Blue Point Demon Souls. That's all I would ask for. Because that was gorgeous, by the way, but also ran insanely well. But yeah,
also,
for me...
this is an example of why they need to kind of like up the ante on their games or remake them for current audiences, because that was my first time playing Demon Souls ever.
Same.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
nice.
I had never touched Demon Souls. The only one I haven't beat is Dark Souls 2. Most people have said like it's the worst of the group.
Oh,
I beat one, I've heard the way the enemies are set up, it's like more mass enemies versus like special. I don't know. I heard a few things about it where it's like wasn't as exciting. I went back through 1 remastered on PC at one point. I don't know if 2 quite got the same treatment, so I just haven't been to 2. I've done just about the rest. I beat Sekiro. That's still my hardest boss that I've probably fought. The end of Sekiro. I forget the guy's name, but that was like a couple of days for me to beat that guy.
Ishin Sword Saint, it took a fucking week.
Yeah, it was multiple days of like 3 or 4 hour streams trying to beat him, and then finally it was just like a certain piece would start click. It's like, okay, I get through the first phase, and then you figure out there's a second thing, you figure out there's a third, and you're like, I'm gonna die again, and then start it all over. No, yeah, Sword Saint's still one of my hardest, and for a while, my buddy and I, that we've played some Dark Souls 3, the Nameless King, dude flying around on the dragon. So my friend didn't beat him, and I did, and he was like, that was, it's like hats off on that one. But it was like, after I beat Sword Saint, I was like, nothing is close to him so far. Nothing has been the same to that guy. So
no, and that's the thing. Like, no difficulty can really match up to that level. Like, even the poopy ape that we encountered, I forget what the name was of that guy.
The ape with his head cut off. That was more of a... That was a really good reaction moment for the internet, because those were fun to watch. But yeah, you're like, he was not an easy one, but no. Yeah, that was a hell of a boss. I'm trying to think, Liza P, like, they all have a few that are going to be there, but that one still stands out for me big time.
Absolutely. And the fact that, like, I know I'm going to probably get into it with the comments at this point, but I know a lot of people who want to say that Sekiro is a Souls-like. It's not a Souls-like. And I actually was so convinced. I was so, like, I was more than convinced that it was a Souls-like, because From Software made it. It has to be a Souls-like, right? I wasn't thinking about it logically. My friend Fighting Cowboy was talking in stream about how, no, it's not a Souls-like, after someone had asked him about it. And he broke it down, and I'm like, oh, shit. This actually isn't. No Souls game has a skill tree. And no Souls game actually has the abilities from the... Go Gadget Go.
Yeah,
that thing. That he had, that Sekiro has. So there's so many things that make even the movements faster. And we all know that there's these weird dodging mechanics in Souls that it just adds to the charm of the game at this point.
No, I mean, for the longest time, it's like you do mention there's parries and stuff, but it wasn't built around parry and their parry meter. I know there's a better word for it. And actually getting that to break, that has never been a function of a Souls game. The Souls game is the bigger enemies, typically attacks that will absolutely crush the life out of you, but you're able to dodge those kind of things. The Sekiro was a lot more, not to say it was less fantastical, because there was still a decent amount of that, but it was a bit more grounded in scale a lot of the time, outside of like the ape and a couple of the bigger monks. But it was, again, it's like their attack patterns, you would sit there and wail on them for an extremely long time if you played it like Souls, but if you learn the mechanics, obviously you're breaking the posture and stuff like that. Posture is what I was looking for. See, sometimes it just comes. Yeah, but no, it's like, it is not a Souls game, and that's kind of one of those for, like, I have a friend, and he just does not like the whole parry mechanic in games, just not his thing. So he really loved Black Myth Wukong, because that was pure dodge. Like, the whole time. Really good dodge timing, the nice little kind of wisp of yourself as you dodge. I mean, did you play Black Myth?
No, I have not.
Please do. The one thing
I
I will
have
say,
such a strong stance on that game, and I know a lot of people are not going to like my opinion of it. But I find that if the company doesn't want women to play the game, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm going to like what the company stands for. So I just choose not to play it.
that's fair. There's some of that stuff that I'm not aware of, or
Yeah.
don't know.
No,
So
it's just interesting because it's like I'm very, a lot of people, whenever it's content creator and content creator discussing this stuff and everything like that, I'm not an activist. It's very mentally exhausting, activism, I find, and everything. And, bringing in wood is my exhaustion level for the day. There are some things that I publicly do not stand on a lot of the time, or if I stand on it, people don't even know that I stand on it because I don't talk about private stuff all the time, and no content creator has to.
That's fair, yeah.
But whenever it comes to certain things, I will stand on it and I will say, hey, this is the reason why I'm not playing this. If you want to play it, absolutely fine with me, and I'm going to cheer you on as you do it. It's just not my type, not my style.
And that's totally fine.
Yeah. See, guys, Twitter horde, this is what an actual legitimate conversation looks like. You might want to try it. Sorry.
Like zero Fs to give on certain things. Like if there's somebody like sometimes I love how people let me know that it's really easy to mute them. It's really nice because just certain things that they say or whatever, man, just mute. I don't need to engage. It is not worth my time, effort, energy, none of that. So it's totally fine. Or generally as much as I can on my own and be like, all right, what'd I miss? A couple things. Go back to those. And I just made sure I got everything before I got to the end. So before I went to finale part, where it's like point of no return, I went to go do the side thing. Man, if you miss this in that game, I will tell you, that sucks. Like that's why I will tell anybody. If you do, totally understand if you don't, but it's like a game, and this is kind of without spoiling, it's one of those, play how organically you like, but before you go to the finale, check a guide so you can experience this. I feel like that's like the only way to say, and that would be true for like any game. Like in Returnal, same principle would be like, if you just tried to, play through a little bit and go, it's like, there are certain things you could be missing in here, so you want to make sure. It's always hard to tell people not enough, but just enough. Like, I don't want to spoil things, but I kind of want to keep things fresh for them. So, yeah, that's always fun.
Exactly. That's how I felt about Lawrence, to a degree. It's like, I didn't know how to find... Okay, there's a way to kind of wake him up, because when you go into his boss battle in the DLC... he doesn't automatically activate until you find a certain item. And I didn't know that until I played through some of the DLC. And it's like, oh my God, when you find it, it's like, oh shit, okay, this is really cool. And so many people are like trying to activate his boss and they think, oh, I'm just going to walk up to him, la-di-da-di-da. And it's like, nope, doesn't work like that typically.
Yeah. That's some of the good sides of like internet guides. There's also... very spoiler territory, thumbnails that do certain things and stuff like that. It's a delicate line on the internet. That's also why, you saw a couple, but when I do my guides, I pick I'll literally stare at a wall on just like a path and do half of my demonstration for moves or whatever. So I'm not showing anything because I don't want to, because I'll look at other reviews or guides, and I kind of want to pick your brain on this for a second too. The amount of stuff that is spoiled in some reviews, even if I've sat there and I've reviewed the game already, I'm watching it and I'm like, I know where some of this stuff is. This is kind of cool moments. Why is this here? That's always like a delicate line. So it's like, whether it's a bigger publication is like, do certain moments get more clicks, that kind of thing. It's like you were on the bigger platforms and stuff, as opposed to a beginning session review that's a little more boring to watch, but a little like 100% spoiler free. It's like, that's a weird line that I haven't quite figured out for myself yet either. So it's like, where are you on that? I'm kind of curious.
So when I originally started doing reviews, I didn't know exactly how to write them, because 8 years ago, it was my first time going into writing reviews. I was like, okay, I want to say how much I like the game, or if I dislike the game, or just my overall opinion. But the more I do this and the longer I cover games, you cannot absolutely fit everything into a review. It is impossible to fit everything into a review. My take on a lot of the spoiler territory is that during a lot of the videos that I do, actually the entirety of the videos that I do for reviews, I will put that there are massive spoilers in this. If you have not played the game, I would either A, recommend playing the game, or watching a playthrough of the game, looking up some stuff, that way you're, you figure stuff out and you know about at least the premise, or if you don't mind spoilers to make your purchasing decision, just enjoy the video and watch it. But for the majority of my reviews, the stuff that I leave out intentionally is either really awesome secrets that I don't want conveyed in the reviews, because I want people to find that stuff on their own. I had that magical moment. I want that to be their magical moment too, or if something happens that I think is a massive plot point that I can actually just leave out of the review and not discuss it. But sometimes I'll need to, and that's just like kind of teetering on that edge of like, do you talk about it? Do you not? And it's like, I want to give people as much information as I possibly can without being too heavy-handed with it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to have probably just their touch about, again, how far to go with the spoiler and those kind of things. So
the thing with even Astrobot, like I just posted today my review of it, and it's one of those fun moments of where that game is one of the unique ones of where it doesn't really have spoilers. It's just a game that exists on its own merit.
Yeah. It'd be like spoiling Mega Man. It's like not really going to surprise a whole lot there. It's more of how does it play? How does it feel? What is your experience from it? That kind of thing is what matters, as opposed to this really cool story moment. Here you go. Why'd you do that?
Exactly. And by the way, guys, seeing Pyramid Head as a little Astrobot. Oh my God, it was so cute. It was so cute.
I'm working my way through it slowly. I haven't played it yet. So
it was so cute. And then I actually, because the thing is that I have been gaming since I was 10. The first game I ever played was Resident Evil 1 Remake, and seeing Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield as a little Astrobot.
That's the first game you played when you were 10? Good start. That's where you want to be. I started with Mario. I'm a little older than you.
You sounded like a very concerned father for a second. That was the first game you played when you were 10?
That was the first game. It'd be like, hey, here's my child. You are 10. And Last of Us 1. Go.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm curious, though. I know I didn't have this question written down at all, but what are some of your hobbies outside of content creation?
Depends on what I get access to do lately. My wife and I have actually been just like lifting weights for fitness for a while, but that's definitely one of them. I've enjoyed movies for as long as I can truly remember. I saw Jurassic Park in theaters when I was 10. I think I got the date to go check. So, I mean, I've been watching movies, and then as soon as I was 18, I bought my first computer that had a DVD player in it. I had the first DVD player in my house, and I started buying DVDs, and I had a whole, I have a DVD rack over here that's full of other gaming stuff now, but I had two of them full, DVDs, then Blu-rays, then 4K. So it's just, I have been a movie fanatic for a very long time. But also I'm like a tech nerd, so when it comes to graphics cards and processors and all that stuff, like building my computers, I've been doing that for a long time now. Big nerd, like I told you, I got an OLED monitor, and then also still enjoy like cars and racing and F1 and Corvette racing and stuff like that. I actually had a car that I took on a track for a little while. So, I've played some little, I'm not as much into like sports per se, but I did mud running for a little while, early 30s, stuff like Tough Mudder and that stuff. We ended up doing like 5 different Tough Mudders, and so we've done our fair share of that. So yeah, I feel like my hobby list is not that exciting, but there's some nerdy stuff in there for sure.
Hey, listen, if you enjoy it, that's what matters, though, to be honest. Yeah. For me, the hobbies vary of where, I like Magic the Gathering. I'm into Dungeons and Dragons. Recently, I'm currently creating a story for my own team for Dungeons, so I'm really excited about that.
I have never played. I would be curious to try it. I just don't know if I'm for one, I'm not going to I would be terrible for voice acting to commit to something like that, but it would be interesting to experience at some point. So I do appreciate that.
It is a learning curve because there's so much that I would have never expected with the storytelling in Dungeons and Dragons. It's just so much fun. I'm also a book nerd. I absolutely love reading. I mark and carve out a day for an hour every single day to just read for 1 hour.
You and my wife, she reads a ton. She reads a ton too, so I almost have to make time for us to watch stuff because she reads constantly. So that is one of her things for sure.
Yeah, if I'm not like outside shoveling the mountain of snow that we have, or bringing in wood, or like doing stuff with the family, I'm inside reading if I don't have work to do. Like that's just me. Or doing music production, because that's one of my other big hobbies is doing music production and everything.
Very cool.
It's funny too, because in college I used to do soccer, not for like a sport or anything like that, but just for like, you know, the fun of it and everything like that. The one thing that I found that was hilarious was that when people tried to kick the ball, you can tell how long they've been playing soccer by just the way that they kick the ball. And I've never played soccer before, and whenever I played it for the first time, I tripped and I slipped under, so I didn't even kick the ball at all. I just slipped and fell on the ground. I'm just like,
that's an epic fall.
Klutz.
That's all right.
Praise the sun.
Yeah. And then our other thing that keeps us pretty occupied is we have 2 huskies and currently a 3rd foster husky. So
huskies. I'm allergic to them, but I absolutely love them from afar.
I have some allergies. We do it anyway, so that's a thing. See, but yeah, I've always...
that's a devotion.
I've always wanted, like, no kids, we have dogs. I always wanted huskies for as long as I could remember. We went to kind of look for first dog as my wife and I were kind of working on getting married and getting a house and stuff like that, and found actually a husky breeder in Texas. You wouldn't expect that, but there was one around here, and then our first 2 huskies came from that breeder, and then our 3rd one that we've got now came from a rescue. But no, it's like got 1 husky, and I don't know if I could go with another breed now. So I'm a little biased now that we've had them there.
You see, huskies and Dobermans for me are some of my favorite dogs. I had 2 dogs before when I was a teenager, 2 poodles, and they were just as rambunctious as huskies. My gosh, the energy level that poodles have is just enormous. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But no, now I have 2 cats. Even though I'm allergic, we still have them. We live in the country part of upstate New York, and one of the biggest issues that we have here is a lot of mice that try to get in during the wintertime. So we put them outside in an area, they catch the mice, they come in, share their victories, and we have a party. So
I haven't heard about the gifts from the cats. That sounds just to confirm it a little bit, but you're probably like, hey, one less one running around the house or near it, so that's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, what they normally catch is bats and mice, and Feather,
the bats
my
are
oldest cat.
surprising. That's impressive.
What he'll do, and this is, I always thought he was such a ninja, is like he'll be on the stairs just sitting there, and there's a bat just flying around, just hovering around and everything, and he'll take his paw and he literally whacked it and it fell. He caught it, and I was like, Feather, just bring it outside, please. And we like guide him over. It doesn't get hurt or anything. He drops it outside and he comes back in.
Oh man, that's funny. No, not a whole lot of bats around here. We're pretty safe in the suburbs, so I am definitely pretty bat free. Mostly mice free too. So I think we've had like 1 rat that one of our dogs caught in the backyard.
Oh, nice. Okay, you see that's good. Yeah, I'm.
One squirrel definitely did not make it as well. Yeah, no, it was very quick. I wasn't. No, well, unfortunately, it was one of those where it was just like my wife was home. She let the dog outside, and then it was just like about as fast as he could run, and then it was just like my wife heard the squeal, gone. Like it was so fast, and I was just like, oh man. So Enzo, he's the oldest one now because we lost Raya last year. But Enzo, he's 11 now. You'd swear Enzo was like 5. He's still got good energy to him, but no, he's the only one with the squirrel takedown so far, so he's got that on his belt. We have a lot of squirrels in our neighborhood, so it's not like surprising that there would be one, but yeah, definitely. Normally we'll just be like walking around, and they're pretty brazen because when the dogs are on a leash, they'll be like in the yard, and they're like, "You can't get me. What are you gonna do?" Well, they were in our backyard, and there was no leash, so sorry, dude.
It's kind of like the reverse with Tom and Jerry, you know? It's the same kind of relationship they have.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was the unfortunate side of that one. So.
What's interesting though is that like that's the same way my cat is. Even though he's going to be, I think he's gonna be 12 this year. He's an older cat, but he acts like he's 5 as well because each time he catches a mouse, he will sit there, stare at me with like the Puss in Boots eyes, and I was like, I'm not touching that, my guy. Like I don't know what you expect me to do with that right now.
Need gloves, couple trash bags, something. Just take it outside, something.
Yeah. And you know, I love how we got on this tangent, but I'm gonna mosey on to some Bloodborne
I was like,
because
we probably should talk about some games again. So people, when I upload this on my channel, they're like, "What is going on?" So it's fine.
Right. So the next topic I want to get into is the blood of Born, where the anniversary is going to be coming up next month. And we have not seen a remake, and we have not seen a PS port. I want to know your thoughts on this, because I think this is the only game that PlayStation has put out that has not seen a remaster at all.
I mean, yeah, between Horizon getting its double up, Last of Us probably getting a triple up, it is so overdue. Now, there was the recent, was it the FromSoft interview? Somebody. No, it was Shuhei Yoshida. His interview that I think has kind of been spilling a little bit of beans about, like, From loves Bloodborne, but they didn't like the way that Sony handled, was it Demon Souls, the first one? Which, again, that was like the first one of the genre. Nobody quite knew, didn't get the marketing, kind of a cult hit now, but it wasn't what it was back then. Please give us the Bloodborne. Do you have any? That is that is the easiest 10 million seller that I think they could probably make.
Right.
I kid you not.
Right.
Like, there are so many people who would love to play that fresh, new PS5, 60 frames per second, SSD loading speeds, loading times in that game. Oh my god, I remember PS4 doing that whole thing. All of those that's really all I care. The glow up could happen with PSSR for all I care. Literally just loading 60 frames per second. I'll happily go play all the way through DLC, but I am not buying it until you do that. I will buy whatever version of it is. I will do the full $70 purchase, even if it counts that I own the old one. I don't care. But if it goes full remaster, remake, I would love to see like the Demon Souls remake style, because that was gorgeous. And that just kind of took everything up a notch, even on some of the more recent releases. Like Demon Souls, for an old game, looked better than most of the ones we'd have recently. I was like, damn. So now with ray tracing and everything else, I mean, it would look absolutely gorgeous. So I hope we get something like that. I'll save another thing I'm thinking of for your next question, because I have a very specific answer for that. But for Bloodborne, I mean, 10-year anniversary makes sense if they do. And they've also had the tease. What was not the state of play? It was the last thing that Sony did. It was like, just keep waiting, or patience, or what was it the patience thing?
I think so, yeah, because I saw that, and then in one of the trailers that they had, they showed like the Bloodborne clip when you're at the bridge area. I'm like, why are you doing this? And also, as a side note, Kojima posted a PT Silent Hills thing. It's like everyone's just teasing us right now at this point.
Yeah, so they have to know. They're not stupid.
No.
I've read some people would claim that Sony's stupid the way they handled some of the live service stuff with God of War live service and something else going on. I was like, well, we don't know what those would have been, but who knows? Either way, I know they have to know the desire for the game. I feel like it's either one person in my community or one of my friends was like, PS6 launch title. That could make a lot of sense. So it could be one of those where, honestly, what I wonder is, like, Bluepoint just got taken off whatever live service they were on. They're still a studio. They're still kind of a thing. So they could be, like, in the works. And then if PS6 is a few years from now, they could do a full-blown remake-style deep dive and then just have that thing perfect polished for PS6 to be like, if that was your day one launch, something like that, I could see something interesting there. I don't know if they're honestly going to tell us anything on the 10-year anniversary. If it's next month, that seems too soon, because we just got a state of play. And then if you do a showcase, it's probably closer to summer. But
my hope is that they tell us, hey, here's a PC version, remastered, 1080p, 60 frames per second on Steam. Here you go. But then they do the actual. I'm not hoping for a Bloodborne 2, but a kind of alternate reality of what Bloodborne is before the whole Bloodborne virus took place. I feel like that could be something interesting for PS6. I don't think that there is going to ever be a Bloodborne 2, simply because this game was so incredible on its own merit that it doesn't need a follow-up.
Yeah.
What it does need, I think, is kind of a what happened before the Blood Church, like what happened before everything, and then you go through and then you see even more amazing bosses, because Kojima's incredible.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Not Kojima.
Miyazaki,
Jesus Christ.
No, that's fair. Both incredible, just different ways.
Different ways.
That's one of those backlogs I've got to get to is Death Stranding.
Yeah, Death Stranding 2 is gonna be coming out, and my entire soul is ready.
I need to play that because even my friend who is not a big fan of like he'll usually like skip through the story and stuff like that on games and like go more just more for the action and the play, which play how you want. But he even was like, Death Stranding's awesome. I'm like, for you to say that, I have a lot of questions, but also I need to play it. So it's kind of one of those.
Oh yeah.
So
It's
wait,
one of those games of where by the end of the game you will need the tissues.
I've heard the final cutscene's like 4 hours long, so yeah, I've heard it's just absolutely insane.
I
But yeah,
played it on
Bloodborne.
my PC for the first time, and that was the first time that I actually like experienced a game from Sony because I'm fairly a new Sony player. The first time I ever played on a Sony console was for the PS4.
Oh, there you go.
So what that was my first experience was Bloodborne. So I made sure like I was ready, I was prepped, and then going into that world, I feel like Sony, if you guys actually manage to pull off a Houdini and get us either a remaster or a PC port as fans, I can say, well, we'll all be eternally grateful.
Yeah, something's got to happen at some point. They with the tease of patience and everything else, like that's not an accident. Those things are over edited. Somebody's like, "Are we sure we want to tease them with this and patience on there?" Someone had to have known that. So it's like there's always this little tiny part of me is this like it's got to be cooking somewhere, or it's on a whiteboard, and they're just waiting to break, in case of emergency glass kind of thing. We'll see, but yeah, it feels like it has to happen at some point. That's all I know.
It does. And the thing is that I have to say from personal experience, as someone who works as a video editor for Windows Central, everything goes checked. There is nothing that goes unchecked when you're editing a video together.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I
That public
like
one? Oh, yeah.
no, and the cool thing about it is that you ask your boss, "Is this cool? Is this cool? Do you want anything else put into the mix?" It's not like you edit it, send it out, and it's ready to go. No, there
That's
is
seen by
yeah.
big trailer like that is seen by so many eyes at this point. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah,
So
it's intentional, every bit of it.
one has to hope. So your next thing that you mentioned you want to talk about is games that you want to see get a remake but aren't being discussed. Now I have like a very specific one in my head. So I want to ask you that first.
It didn't get much of a remake whenever it came out. I think it just got like a soft, not even a remake, a soft remaster. I want to see Bloodborne 1 and 2 get remade.
Bloodborne 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Are you...
Bloodborne.
Yeah, I mean, Bloodborne cell the brain. That's why I'm like, I don't know.
Blood Rain.
Blood Rain. There you go. I was like, those aren't the same.
I don't know if I should just redo that or leave that in. That
No,
was
no,
hilarious.
you just roll with those. You just let them happen.
Blood Rain.
I remember that. Okay.
1 and 2.
Fair.
I think that those were iconic pieces of early 2000s gaming, and it is an absolute crime that we got the third game that we did, but we didn't get a proper sequel to the story of Bloodborne 2. Oh my god, I'm saying it again.
Rain
What
2.
the fuck? Blood Rain 2. Bloodborne is just on the mind right now.
Yeah, you are
Jesus
definitely hooked in.
Christ. It's all that parrying of Orphan of Cause, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, you were just in the zone. It's fine.
Oh
Yes,
man,
Blood Rain 1 and 2. That's fair.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember specifically getting the PC game for that when I was a kid, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, vampires! This looks so cool. It's so much fun." And my mom walks in on me loading up the game, and you know how like back in the day, it'll have like this kind of clubby, weird like synth music while it's loading up the progress of the game with like the images in the
Yeah,
background.
that sounds about right.
And there was an image that was a still, and it was just a female with the boobies showing just
yes.
front forward. And my mom saw it, and she was like, husband, what is our daughter playing right now? And yeah, I could not play that as a kid. I ended up playing Blood Rain in college for a thesis that I did, and it was so interesting to see how old that game looks. It looks like it's been through a lot, and I want to see it get the remake that it deserves.
Yeah, some games hold up a little better than others for certain reasons, but yeah, I'm kind of looking through pictures. I could see like recently, I know Legacy of King got kind of a remaster, but I would have liked to have seen more from that than just the remaster. I would like to see it a full blown remake, but I still need to eventually go back and see that one. So no, my remake is very specific, but I feel like I would have some support from some of the community. So if you picture Final Fantasy VII Remake, take an old pixelated game made into big 3D style. It's very simple. It's Chrono Trigger.
Interesting. Okay.
Chrono Trigger Remake.
I did not expect that answer.
And I would shut down anything I am doing to play that. That is like my top of list because you've got the ship, you've got time travel, you've got all the different characters and the stories for each of them. It is one of my favorite games of all time, if not like my true favorite, because just of the characters, the plot that happens, the story, the combat is still one of the most unique things with the combo moves that you get to do and everything. And if you could take that, all of that, and capture like that magic into something like Remake, I don't know if you're going to get like part 1, 2, and 3, because I think it's only a 30-hour RPG for the whole game anyway. We don't need 3 of them. Yeah, it's only like, I think it's like 25, 30 hours. You could search everything and probably make it a little longer, but people who know what they're doing, it's somewhere around there. I don't know if you'd stretch it into like part 1 and 2 and 3 the way they did Final Fantasy VII. I would love to see that. That would be, because I think it would transfer so well because you kind of have the overmap that you could use, but you've got. I would be really curious to see how that would work, but man, I hope one day I get to play that again in a modern setting.
I think I just heard like an existential sigh of just like, I really want this to happen.
I do. That's anybody who ever jokes about that is just like, what's your gaming want? I'm like, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII Remake style, period. That's easy. That's like my one. There's some other ones that maybe, but like I would love to have a reinvigoration of like Mega Man for some reason, because those were games I grew up on. Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3. Literally the battle music in Mega Man 2 and Dr. Wily's Castle, like those are ones I have on Spotify saved.
Oh, nice.
To that level kind of thing. So I mean those are classics for me. Like Nintendo Zeldas that I've played, I mean we've got those kind of reissues and stuff to play, so I mean Nintendo's doing its thing. But for outside of a Nintendo, that's probably one of my big ones.
See, I need Wind Waker to be available on the Switch. I need that. That was the first Zelda game I ever played, and that was just an absolute
solid
beauty.
One. That's a solid one.
It's interesting that there are so many different games that are being currently remade. Like a lot of Resident Evil games right now are being remade. My biggest fear is that they're personally going to remake the first one. Now, I know for accessibility reasons.
Zero or
no, Resident Evil 1 remake, the one that they did in 2003.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
2002, I think, actually, yeah. It's so weird to me because it's like I love that game and I love how just absolutely perfect it is on its own merit. For accessibility, I think is the only reason why they would need to remake it and like upping the graphics a little bit. But even then, like, what are your thoughts on Resident Evil 1 getting another remake on the remake?
Never played it, but I was like, at this point, the way Capcom has handled a lot of theirs recently, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4, they have all been so well received. I would have faith in them doing it right now because they can't seem to miss. Capcom's kind of batting 1,000 at the moment. So for me,
putting out a lot.
Yeah, they're putting out a lot, but like, I mean, Dragon's Dogma 2, and then you've got Resident Evil 4, and then Resident Evil 2, and then you had 8. I mean, outside of things like, what was the Extinction one? The dinosaur one? That's one of those, like...
Dino Crisis?
No, that's the one everybody wants. What was the recent one with, like, the dinos dropping in, like, the mass... Oh, what was the recent Capcom?
Which one you're talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Damn, that one just looked weird. I don't know what it was about.
Exoprimal, yeah. I had to look at it. Yeah, that was just like, no, that's... Everybody wants Dino Crisis, not that, so... No, honestly, the way they've handled Resident Evil, I mean, they could honestly do what they want at this point, and they kind of have to prove that they would break it before I would worry about much with them. So far, they've treated everything very well, from what I've heard.
That's what I was worried about with Blubber Team and Silent Hill 2 remake. I was so worried about the way that was going to be remade.
Did you play their previous one, the Medium?
Yes, I did. I actually enjoyed the Medium. I wasn't too much of a fan of how the mental health was, taken on. But overall, I loved how the dual screen was done, being able to do.
I thought it was decent, but after everybody was just like, nominated for Game of the Year, kind of Silent Hill too. I'm like, all right, Bloober Team, there you go. They needed a win because not a lot of people had faith, and they went way beyond the expectation on that. So that was nice to see. It's nice to see teams like that get a win.
It really is, and I was so happy to see how much love and how much just compassion they put into that game, making sure that everything stood out the way it was supposed to. Pyramid Head scared the shit out of me. Like, I don't normally get scared of those types of games, but there's a section, no spoilers by the way, of where you go up into a ladder, and I, collected ammo. I got the rest of the stuff that I needed, and I go back down, and I go a little bit further, and he's there. He's waiting for me. That scared the ever living crap out of me.
Games that can do that are good. I will say, I think Bloodborne was the first one for me. I don't know the zone because I haven't replayed it too much, but I remember audibly being worried. And it was one of the guys dragging the chains. They were substantially taller than normal. And it was way off screen, the sound, and you're like, that sounds large. And then finally it shows up and you're like, oh my. So, no. Actual fear, worry done through games is always impressive. Same thing as you said with kind of the clickers. When they're done right, if you can put me on edge in a game, that's actually pretty impressive.
It's so interesting because when I ended up going into Silent Hill, I was kind of late to the Silent Hill train. I saw the movies first, and then I saw the games. And then I played Silent Hill 2 first, the original version, and then what was it? Silent Hill Homecoming, then Silent Hill 4, The Room, and then number 1. And it was so fascinating to play the very first game in this day and age, because you see not only how much love they put into the Silent Hill games, but how much kind of like they could just go with whatever they wanted to. They could make it as scary as they wanted to, because that was kind of the golden age of gaming, of where it was a Wild West. You didn't have to worry about anything. You didn't have to worry about much of copyright. You could go with what your passion was and let it flow with that. Granted, there were some things that came out that were quite questionable, like, in my opinion, Fallout 3, but there were certain things that were made that were just absolute pieces of art. And that's actually kind of a spur of the moment question that I have for you, of what was the game, in your opinion, that caused you to be like, whoa, this is like legitimately a masterpiece?
I mean, obviously we mentioned Chrono Trigger favorite. That's like the emotions it evokes and the character journeys you go on. Honestly, for me, for true art, for the combination of emotions, story told even without a word spoken, the artistry and the music combined, Ori 1 and 2 for me are very special. Those are ones that I'm like, if you play through that and you don't feel anything, I got a couple questions kind of thing. Like, those really are, both of them I cried on stream when I played them, I'm pretty sure. But they were just, and the music is so fitting, and it's Gareth Coker's soundtrack. I've listened to that later. So good. Both of those are very specific ones that I would say just graphically, story, they tell a fantastic little story. Not a word is spoken. Don't need dialogue, don't need voice text, nothing. And just what you see on screen says so much without saying anything. And I was like, that's an impressive thing. But then also you take something, for me, also like one of my games of this generation, the combination of God of War and Ragnarok, for me, just because of the story, the acting, the emotions. I mean, when you get into the facial capture and all of the stuff that goes into those games, I know they're like big production, but also it's like when you get into Ragnarok and just the moments in those things that just totally blow me away. I will say one thing that probably gets me a lot in games is scale, because it's something that's really hard to convey in like TV and cinema and stuff out, like not normally Godzilla sometimes you'll see, but like truly scale in the first 2018 God of War, when it's like you're like the level where you're kind of falling down the giant, and that sense of scale is, and then also of course Jormungandr, without saying too much, that's, if you know you know. When you feel that level of scale, size versus your, I guess, almost tininess to everything else that could be around you, it is something that only games really get to do typically very well, I think.
I agree.
Those are kind of a couple.
Yeah, that's honestly how I felt with, oddly enough, Baldur's Gate 3. The
Haven't
just
played it because again, it's 100 hours I don't have, but man, I would love to.
It's one of those games that are just incredibly massive. Like it is not only in the time that it takes to complete it, but the way in which that it's approached. You enter into just a world, and you feel like just sharp intake of breath moments. Death Stranding also did that for me. And honestly, Ori was the first game that I actually played on an Xbox in 2016. So that holds a lot of special memories for me. So it's really cool to hear you say that about it. I absolutely bawled my eyes out at the end of the second game. That was so emotional. My gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, those games both get to the emotions. Yeah, there's certain ones that just stand out for me. I mean, the first 10 minutes of Last of Us 1, I'm like, if you get nothing out of that, I'm just like, all right, I'm sorry, but yeah, that likely will get something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Reliving those moments again. Like I
Oh
remember
yeah.
even seeing the documentary they did for the Last of Us one, and seeing the actors behind the scenes doing all of that. It's like it evokes even more emotion because you
Yeah.
see how hard they're working, but also like just the acting is brilliant. One of the next things I wanted to dive into was Destiny 2, because that was one of the first pieces of content that you did besides Destiny 1. I want to get your input on what you think Destiny could do to get more new fans, because we see kind of like this rebirth in the live games. We see this kind of momentum that's going with live action, and we kind of see also a stagnation that's happening a little bit. Like a lot of games are being compared to Destiny 2. Is it going to meet up to that level? A lot of games are also being compared to very story driven games. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a
Fortnite's
lot of
another
games,
one. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of games also, I think players want to have that intensive story too. So do you think that there's kind of this opportunity for Destiny to be better, or do you think right now is as good as it's going to get?
Oh man, that is a whole thing to unbox. I have thoughts, obviously. Been 10 years in this franchise. So Destiny has had a couple moments that have been reinvigorating to the franchise. Destiny 1 launched, had some bumps, couple expansions, wasn't sure. Raids did kind of have a saving grace for doing raids on console gaming and all that. And then Taken King launched. That was one of those where people were like, oh damn, okay, this is legit, cool story. Then everything got bigger and the world changing, and that was kind of its moment. Then Rise of Iron was okay, pretty good, but okay. Destiny 2 came out, changed systems, messed stuff up with ammo and double primary, so many things. Then, again, second year, they did their Forsaken moment, and that was massive expansion, two different planets that basically you would go between, big story, lots of characters, one of the best cinematics still to this day in Destiny, and you had that big moment. And then they had, I'm trying to think how many expansions, because it was Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, there's so many. Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, Lightfall's one. There's one in the middle, and all of those kind of had some ups and downs to them along the way. It's also when they introduced seasons, was pretty much right after Forsaken, I think, is when they started seasonal content. And seasonal content at first was like, hey, here's a little bit more story. You get some story over this time, and you got a little bit of downtime. It was their live service model that they were doing. And then after a while, the seasons got very formulaic. It was like, okay, you got 7, 8, 9 weeks of stuff that you would see, and you log in for a week, but not much happened. And then recently, after Final Shape, which I'll get back to in a second, they tried episodes where it was 3 different acts, so it was a little bit bigger. But again, the story was done in like chunks, so then you're taking a story that's like 9 weeks long, but you're finally seeing the end of it like 15 weeks later, and it's absolutely killing the momentum. That one didn't quite land. Then they tried to give you all the story at the beginning of each act. Well, you did 1 week on, 5 weeks off, 1 week on, 5 weeks off. That got to even be weirder. And then this one, we'll kind of see how it delivers with Heresy. So it's like the seasonal model to carry continual plot has been a moving target the entire time for what works. And even now, I think it's just to the point to where the biggest thing that everybody was waiting for is the culmination of the Light and Dark saga, the pyramid ships and the Traveler, circles versus triangles, if you want to get into shapes. Literally, but to the point of like, that was the big culmination. And Final Shape came out in June of last year, and it got, like, I mean, my buddy Travis Northup on He works for, he does freelancing for IGN for reviews, but he reviews it because he does a lot of Destiny, but he's on the podcast with me and Lord Cognito, and he gave it a 9, like his highest review for any Destiny expansion, period. And same thing with everybody. I think it even on Metacritic has like in somewhere in like the low 90s. It is the best Destiny expansion. Everybody's like, can you land this like Destiny Avengers endgame plane? And they did. They actually landed the plane. I like kind of lost. I broke to. There was one point like got a little teary eyed at the end of that expansion. The culmination between the giant raid, the huge 12-person mission to bring everybody together, the world that we got to go through. The Witness actually was a. Nobody thought the villain could actually hold up, but then when you got more out of the Witness, you're like, this dude is absolutely legit. All of that came together to be this big 10-year like fireworks display, and it was fantastic. The problem now, where do you go from there? If you have a game that gets to that high after that much of a buildup of a 10-year saga, it was literally Destiny 1 was the Light and Dark saga began. Like the Tease of the Traveler, the Tease of the Pyramid Ship was Destiny 1. 3 years of Destiny 1, 7 years of Destiny 2. To actually end it there and then land the plane was astounding to, I think, everybody who was going into that who had been a fan. They almost hit their peak Destiny 2 players many years after launch. They were like, and honestly, if servers would have been fine, they would have passed. It was like 316K or whatever it was. Yeah, like and then now we're at the point in episodic content where the release schedule's been funky and they've been trying different things. We have seen some of the lowest lows for the entire 7 years for like Destiny on Steam. And it's been on there since the beginning. And it's even for me a point to where they tried sunsetting. And do you know what I mean by that? So the idea is, like in Destiny, obviously you're getting a lot of loot. Typically it's all guns, different perks, different combinations, stuff like that. And whether it was a Void auto rifle or a Solar auto rifle or a Void pulse rifle, like you'd eventually be storing all this stuff in your vault for different circumstances and situations. They tried sunsetting around Beyond Light, I think it was. And what they did is basically anything that was a certain season and older was no longer usable in new content. Well, okay, picture World of Warcraft. New expansion comes out. You can't keep the old stuff. You're going to go get new gear. They were going for the same principle to keep things fresh, because otherwise you get to power creep. Otherwise everything's boring. You're either going to creep power, be like, this gun's better than the last one, but this gun's better than the last one. And at some point the gun's going to be so good, it's going to be the BFG and Doom for power creep, or you get rid of the old stuff and you're able to kind of do different things. And there was even a promise from one of the, like weapon designers or something. It's like, and the quote was, it's like, hey, with sunsetting, we're going to be able to make really cool shit that only hangs around for a little while. And that was the idea. Problem was, it didn't happen. And the other problem was, you got rid of 8 seasons of gear that we have been accumulating for a while. And unfortunately, what was coming in was at such a slow pace, it didn't fill the gap. They weren't ready for it. They didn't plan ahead, and then just like the cadence of what was coming back, we were also getting basically reskins of old weapons with kind of a little different coat of paint on it to come back in the game, or almost reissues of weapons. So it's been this attempt to try and keep things fresh. And then, like, it was literally 1 season later, they got rid of sunsetting. They're just like, hey, anything else you've got that wasn't already sunset, it's good forever. So now, from literally, I think, season 9 or 11, whatever it was, onward, we have been able to hold on to every single weapon, every single exotic. So when you have 150 exotic weapons that you can pick from, I have a tool for everything that you're going to put in front of me. So when you make a new one, it can be different, but it's not going to really be that needed. Some are cool, some are kind of okay for certain PvP situations, some are PvE. Sorry, you look like you're going to ask something, so I'll pause.
Yeah, no, it's just, it makes me curious now. Do you think that if that's the case now with Destiny 2, do you think that there is going to ever be in the foreseeable future a Destiny 3, or do you think they've reached what their maximum capability is for right now, at least?
So, that opens another can of worms. With what the studio has gone through in layoffs, they are truly about half the size that they were. They were about 1,1600. They're down to somewhere in the 8s, from what I've heard. Also, half the studio is working on Marathon, which we know is in the works and coming to fruition, demos, testing, sometime this year, everybody hopes, but we'll see. So Marathon is getting to the point, and what happened is Forsaken happened, and then you had Beyond Light. Oh, Witch Queen is the one I was forgetting, which was an actually really good expansion. Savathun was an excellent character. You've had all of those characters all of this time. You're like, what do you do now? So that's part of it. But Beyond Light, Witch Queen, and Lightfall, which was the big flub, the group that helped make Forsaken, which was like that next reinvigoration, basically year 2, all of those team members and everything, they took a pivot and went to go work on Marathon. And then within Bungie, they spun up about 2 or 3 other indie projects, one of which is now under Sony's umbrella. The others have been laid off and let go. So they got to the point where Destiny was making a good amount of money. Then they're like, hey, some of these people don't want to work on Destiny anymore, probably because if you work on something it probably took 4 years before it came out. They'd been working on it for a decade. Maybe they wanted something fresh. So they went to go work on Marathon, and they were working on that for the past 4 or 5 years. And then you had a couple other teams that probably spread some of it thin. Destiny was neglected, especially PvP. Like the PvP team did not get a new map for 3 years or more, whatever it was, not a new map. So all of that happened. So you've kind of lost faith in the PvP community. They're trying to do some things with the teams that's there, and they're doing some things that are actually, like, Trials recently got a bit of a reinvigoration. People are like, cool, there's a lot of loot. But I'm like, it's one more Void hand cannon. Do I really need it? Nah, not really. I've got other stuff I could be doing. The problem with all of this is now, you have the people who are on the Destiny team. They have, at this point, the plan for the future is Destiny Apollo and Behemoth. So they're going to be like 6-month expansions. So instead of like 4 seasons or 3 episodes for a year, it's going to be a slightly bigger expansion, kind of about the size of Rise of Iron is what they're kind of referencing it to, and then another one about 6 months later is their plan. So you have a group of Destiny people working on that, and then whatever's going to go along with a little shorter live service or whatever updates happen in those 6 months, and you got 2 teams that are like concurrently working back and forth. And then you got a group working on Marathon, which is not going to be small because there's a lot of weight on Marathon at this point for Sony as one of their few live services that they really want to do well, and Bungie's spending a lot of money on this. That's where all the studio's at. So Destiny 3 does not exist for 5 years at a minimum. That's the problem.
Honestly, like, just from you explaining all of that, such a mess right now.
I mean, that's the problem. It really is. Because they spread themselves too thin, and the other spin-up projects didn't pan out. And whatever happened, they were probably spending too much money, losing too much. They ended up getting bought by Sony. Sony's coming in, checking stuff out. Stuff's not working. Where's the money going? So, people had to answer. They chose Marathon. They took the Gummy Bear project, which is something I don't know, but that went to Sony's umbrella. And then you've got Destiny still surviving. But for the longest time, it just felt like it's kind of limping along. It's just limping along to kind of continue to survive and not to, like, crap on the content that's there. Because it's not what I would call, like, bad content for Destiny, but it's not that exciting. It's not that fresh either, because it's like I've still got my abilities of my character, I've still got my same arsenal, I'm still shooting these mostly same aliens. And if you think about what a Destiny 3 would be, it would truly have to rebuild the franchise from the ground up. Completely new system, completely new planets, new guardians, new powers. Something like that would be the only thing that would take people like you who haven't played it, or people who got burned somewhere in the past 10 years to come back and say, is this the time I try out Destiny 3 because it's brand new, I'm not 7 years behind, and it's fresh? That would be what it...
Well, the thing is that I've played Destiny before, actually. I started playing it a couple of years ago, and I was new to it whenever the Witch Queen came out, and
good time to jump in.
Yeah, I was really enthralled with it because when, excuse me, I did some videos on it and I was like, wait, I'm going into a new game. Let's see how this works out. I saw that when you opened up, the cases to get weapons, there were a bunch of ice cubes and people kept making fun of me for calling them ice cubes instead of... Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah. And it's always just going to be ice cubes for me now. But seeing the story and seeing how all of the characters work so well together, like the voice actors, everything just works well together. And then I'm seeing the latest content for Destiny, and the Destiny that I saw when I first got into the community, no offense to the company, but it's so much better than where it is right now.
I mean, that's the problem with episodes versus the other thing versus the team that they had. I mean, Witch Queen for an expansion, and then if you didn't play Final Shape, like, Final Shape was better than Witch Queen, and Witch Queen was damn good. Witch Queen was like an 8, Final Shape was your 9, 9.5. Like, the Final Shape was that freaking good, But then after that, but the other side of that is people were like, I saw the end of my 10-year saga. I'm going to go play other things. Like, I finally got my exit point. I finally got my off ramp from this highway, and I got a point where I can stop. They finally found a way to quit the addiction when they saw the end of the end of the 10-year saga. So you had that happen on top of now episodic content being a weird thing. The stories in episodes were very much felt like filler. They weren't doing anything major with the story. This one right now is leading into the future because we're finally getting back into the Hive Gods. We just had like Savathun and Oryx and Ziva. They're all part of this episode for the story, so I'll be kind of curious what happens. But the last two have been mostly nothing burgers, to be kind of blunt. The first one especially was like the whole sequence of the episode was like, huh, there's this thing going on. Then you figure out what it is. You finally track down the person very far down in one of the planets. You face them. They end up getting away. You literally did nothing the whole episode. So that was not a fan. Last season was the Scorn, which is kind of fine, but you're like, it's kind of a minor, that's a B plot character. That's a extended universe situation, as Travis would call it, EU. That kind of thing. So that's where we're at. Like, I don't know what they're going to be able to pull off with Apollo. Is potentially, do we go to another system? Do we have different planets that we explore? And those are going to be new destinations and new stories. But again, you're starting fresh, and the problem with Destiny for years, of which we've talked about, the onboarding and the new player system sucks. It has been bad for a very long time, and a lot of people have been saying it to him, and that's one of the things they might need to work on too. And maybe with Apollo it's a little fresh, but honestly, more often than not, people just see Destiny 2, and if they're not in the community, they just kind of see Destiny 2 as, that thing's still going. It's really hard to get people into it.
And that's the thing too of where when I started playing, I was so confused. I was like, where am I supposed to go? What story am I supposed to see? How am I supposed to even start? I downloaded just the base game of Destiny 2 and thought, okay, this is, no joke, this is so gargantuan. Where do I start? How do I go about navigating this entire thing? And
then there's a bunch of pop-ups and stuff for different stories, and I've interviewed different new players. I've seen different content creators for Destiny have like, what's the new player experience like for this? What's the new player experience like last year? And I've seen different people have those, and none of them have been great. And that's been the past like 3 years, because it's a lot to digest and it's hard to get into. So it's an old franchise, and until you do a fresh start, it is going to be really hard to build that population back up. And especially now, like for Apollo, they talked about weapon tiers. I don't even know if that's going to do it for me, because you have perks that you can enhance so they're slightly more powerful. Well, if a weapon can go from tier 1 to say tier 5 and like the whole thing can be enhanced, it's still going to be the same gun. It's still going to be perks I've been playing with for the past 7 years. Things might be a little bit better, but I'm like, is it really moving the needle for me? I don't know. Armor for years now has been perks that you can put into your armor, but once you get a set of armor that has decent stats on it, you never need another set of armor. So I haven't needed a set of armor for years, and that's 5/8 of your drops are armor, just by numerical math of how many slots you have. So it's more than half of your gear. I'm like, I don't care about almost everything. If you get a good armor set, you've been good since you got it. Period. You're done. Why
don't they incorporate, I would feel like incorporating the Doom system, where you get upgrades that actually work well with what you're doing. Like if you get, I don't know, I remember Doom back in 2016, it had those kind of enhancements for the weapon, or it had the enhancements like the plus up for the armor.
Yeah, they have mods, so if you get like an armor charge, you'll have like a boost to your weapon, or you can get faster, you can get like pickups for certain things. Part of the problem, my issue with even the mod system for Destiny 2 is the fact that part of it is based around ammo drops. And it bugs sorry, this is a hot button for me. It bugs the living hell out of me that part of your build is about getting ammo to drop. Because there's ammo reserves, which they did finally fix once. You can still have it as an option. There are heavy weapon drops and special ammo drops, and there's also reloading. I know it's a shooter, but that's not a build when I'm just trying to be able to use the guns that I brought into the encounter. So part of some of that's been a thing for me too. Now they have the artifacts that they've been doing for a while, where they have some seasonal like perks that are a little bit more unique and cool, or like fusion rifles this season are like a big blast, or grenade launchers are more powerful, and they do that to kind of keep things fresh. But at that point, it's more we're playing how we're told to play, as opposed to me making a build where I want. It's not like you're going to go into Dark or Elden Ring and be like, cool, I'm going to do a blood build right now, or I'm going to go with the crazy giant, I weigh 1,000 pounds and I have 2 stone shields. There's nothing like that because you have to play how the season tells you. You could probably get away with some stuff, but you're literally playing against the optimal path that's laid in front of you, and that happens every single season. Yeah, so it's Destiny's in a weird place, and it's just been going for so long. Every so often, people just get tired of it, and you are slowly just going to bleed players over time for any number of reasons. People who played Fortnite for a while are still probably going to go play other things. They might come back, but it's like, whatever it is, you're going to lose players slowly over time for whatever reason, and the new player experience doesn't help refill that pool.
No. And it's like the last time I played Destiny was probably over a year and a half ago, to be honest. I was playing some of the Witch Queen and I was going into that story and I thought, wow, this is a really awesome story. And I hope this doesn't come across mean at all, but it's like after I played that, I felt like there was really no need to continue. Like there was no need for me to like really get more involved with it because I felt that the story itself was in a very unorganically paced way. To a degree, like
it's
ever
hard to
since
jump
that,
into the middle. I honestly can't even imagine that goes well.
Yeah, and it was so strange because it's like I remember doing the boss battle of part of like the Witch Queen's, like one of her, henchmen.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool boss battle and I loved the concept for it, but it was so weird to like jump in of where it was like I'm supposed to know these characters. I'm supposed to know like who they are and everything like that. And it's like this is supposed to be targeted to new players when it feels like I'm literally the third wheel in a game.
Yep. You're preaching to the choir with any new player who jumps in. I can't imagine what like info dump you would have to go to. And the other thing is they have sunset content. So they not only sunset guns at one point, but they also got rid of the original Destiny 2 campaign. The Forsaken campaign is not in there.
About that.
So there's certain even content, like not even Destiny 1, the fact that content's not like you would have to go to a different game to experience that piece of the story. Even within Destiny 2, the Red War campaign and the Forsaken campaign, they're not there. So what would be the D2 introduction? Nothing. And it's in a weird place. Apollo's its attempt to kind of rebuild what they can to see what they can do. That's kind of like their next fresh beginning. Episodes were filler right now at this point. And we'll see what happens. But like that's the sad thing is between Marathon and what is currently trying to live through Destiny 2 and kind of limping along is about as much as that studio can output. It's just not realistic to say who's working on Destiny 3. There is not a soul that has time to work on that between managing live Destiny 2 and building Marathon. It's just, that's it. So like it would take them mostly shutting down or having Sony saying, okay, you can get a whole new team to make a D3, but know that it's probably 4 or 5 years away if they started now to truly make it fresh and new. I would guess. I don't know, but I would assume if they did a brand new engine, if they did a whatever it would just be years and years away, and that's where you would see the biggest influx, but it's also a big financial risk.
Yeah, it is because the players have kind of this ongoing trust issue from the looks of it of where is it going to be the same as it was before? Or are we really going to actually get something of where just, where it doesn't seem like you're just throwing healing items at it to keep it alive.
Yeah.
Like we don't want a game to just be kept around for the sake of being kept around. We want it to actually organically mean something to the players, and right now it looks like it's just that game, like you said, that's been around forever, and that's a really hard pill to swallow for a developer.
Yeah, I would say the same thing to most any other faces too. It's like I would say this exact same discussion is like this is where I am at, having played for a while, and the outside looking in is just it's not anything that people typically want to jump into now. It's just not. So it's hard, but that's kind of where that's at.
I do appreciate that discussion.
Long-winded answer.
No, it's not. This is what
I've been in it for 10 years, so that's one of those I can talk about pretty easily.
Yeah, no, and this is what the podcasts are for. It's why I enjoy doing these so much, is to get to hear people's perspectives and to get to have these conversations is so meaningful. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the last topic that I want to dive in, and this is where I get to pick your brain about the reviews, is comparing notes on how we do our reviews and just an overall discussion, because I love getting to talk with other reviewers and to see how they do their reviews versus how I do mine. So what would you say is your kind of method behind the madness of how you do your reviews or how you go about them?
So I would probably almost want to defer to you first because that's well, it's still a process I'm working on. I am trying to do reviews, but that's not what I specialize in. So I'm still trying to working on that as a skill. I recently did a mock review. That's all I can say. Can't tell anybody what it's about or what it was. But that one I went much more detail on. So I think that would be a process that kind of at least something I would look back to more if I know I have the time and also like the commitment for it. But a lot like for that one, it actually helped a lot too. As I was playing, to be able to like take notes, I just had literally a note up on my phone and just to take notes and be like, hey, this was it. And then also while I was recording, if there was something that stood out, I've got a little OBS feature set up just to record the last 2 minutes or whatever. And that would be something in there. And for the mock review, it was something I was being critical. So for the mock review, it was something to where like, that wasn't a fun moment. Let me go ahead and clip that one. And like, that was just one of those, I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Whatever happened here. So like for that situation, that actually worked very well for me to go back and be able to, once I went and typed up my pages and pages of notes that I had, it actually worked well to have all of those notes to look back to, little things to remind me of how I felt in this situation or where things were at or what was bugging me here. Character creator had this going on. The opening world was pretty much unguided, like whatever it was. And to be able to have those to look back through and kind of be able to type up a review, because I did a mock, like the actual review, and then I gave them way more after that. But the review itself was kind of on the brutal side, but it was having that list of notes for me to look back through was probably the most helpful it had been before, because a lot of what I'd gone through is like I'll play through and I made like a couple brief notes or something here and there, but that was much more detailed. Like when I got done with a play session or when I got done recording like a chunk of footage, I would take a second, make a couple notes, or if there was truly, I just like, hey, here's the character creator. And then before I move on, I was like, let me make notes about that. And it was more in the moment, I think is probably one of my better, at least I would say, detailed pieces that I'd done. Because I feel like sometimes when I go back to try and capture my thoughts after I play everything without like where I was in the moment, but where I was, say, at the end of the game is kind of a different feeling. So that's been a little bit, so that's why for me, this is still kind of a work in progress of where I am on a review. I tend to probably be more detailed. If you are surprised, you're probably not too surprised if you've seen any of my other content, because part of like a review, it's, I'm not going to go, I don't have the eloquence that say a skill up does to tell an entire story and be lengthy, but then also I'm not quite as brief and haven't mastered the style of brevity that like Travis and IGN can usually knock most everything out in 10 minutes or less. And I'm like, I don't know how I can say everything I want to in 10 minutes, but I probably should be able to. So that's like that's where I'm like not a journalist, not a writer per se. And that's where I need to work on my skills for that. So, I mean, I would be curious more to understand what is your style, kind of what's your process to know, since you've been actually doing that piece of this much longer than I have.
Starting point of a review for me is always going into taking notes. So I'll start up the game, have OBS on, and I am recording the entirety of the footage for the entirety of my play length.
Yeah,
so let's say I'm recording. Yeah, so let's say I'm recording like for an hour per evening. I'm recording an hour piece of footage per evening, so that if there's something that I think, oh, I really like that, I don't want to miss a chance on getting to record that piece of footage for the review if I want to include it. Yeah. And I have like a piece of paper, I'll have notes with me, all handwritten. That way I can just staple it to the back of my review. I print out every single review that I have as a record in case I need to reference something for another article that I do. And there's a point of where if I'm going through a game and I see that, oh, this has multiple endings, I'll just get one ending and do the review based on the ending that I got and say, hey, if you guys want an updated review, I can finish more endings if you guys liked this type of review. Yeah. So that way it's a little less time consuming on my end, so I don't have to go through all the reviews.
Multiple endings are brutal.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, when I was doing, the platinum for Elden Ring and then doing a discussion video on that, that was insane to try to get done, because I thought to myself, there's no way I'm doing an article on this.
Well, that's kind of the thing too that kind of takes me to another point, is the time that you're allotted. And for Avowed, for example, I did that one recently, and I never ended up getting to a review, but I worked on my guide. Um, Depending on how much time you get, I actually had a good amount of time for Avowed. Problem was, I wanted to dive into the Monster Hunter beta. I had priority to work on that one. And then Destiny 2 started its heresy stuff, which actually was quite a bit to cover. All of that was like Destiny was on Tuesday in the middle of the week. Then they had the dungeon on Friday. Then Monster Hunter beta was going on, and that's all in the middle of my review window. And I'm sitting there going, for me, reviews are not as they don't get as many views. That's just not what I'm known for yet. So it's like again why where I prioritize my time is kind of based on traffic and stuff like that. So that's tough. But depending on how much time you get for a review can be a thing. So Starfield, Indiana Jones, I had enough time. Starfield, I had ran into an issue but got fixed and was still able to put a good amount of time into it. But depending on how much time you get for a review, if you're trying to hit embargo, can be tough sometimes. And that's kind of where, when you're talking about multiple endings, or do you golden path, or like you get 2/3 through and you're like, straight to the end. And you're like, then I'm going to miss some side story stuff, so might not get some character development. That's kind of where it can be difficult to give something maybe a fair shake. If 2/3 through you're like, this character's really cool, but these other couple I met I really never got much out of. Well, you didn't have the 2/3 of the act that you got to actually know them, because maybe they're later introductions and stuff like that. So timing for me has been just as much of a thing, mostly because my one job is not that review. I'm usually multitasking, and that's where it's like kind of hard to keep it. And that's also partially why I've like been, when I can typically pull back on Destiny, it's been much like this past couple of years when Destiny's been a little quieter. It's been nicer to do these things, because then I can be like, all right, I'm going to play this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too of where like I got the chance to review Dragon Age Veilguard, and I was not given like a strict time limit with any of that, so it was nice to be able to do that. But then I knew the minute after that I would want to play Inquisition, and Inquisition being an older game, being 10 years old, it was one of those things of where like, as a content creator, and I know you understand this, of where sometimes you need to pick what is good for the content versus what you want to do sometimes.
100%, yes.
Yeah, and what I figured out was that, oh, okay, Veilguard is still pretty hot right now. I can immediately after this review Inquisition, and that video got over 1,100 views. So it was one of those things of where anytime that something is hot from a sequel, immediately go into the next game from past games of that franchise, and they'll equally get amazing views as well, from my experience. But the thing with the reviews is that with Night Rain, that network test that came out, getting to do that, then having to do the review for Astrobot, and then having to do other articles on like news pieces, it's one of those weird kind of things of where we love our job, we love what we do, but slow down just a touch.
Yeah, it's the timing. It's like, that's kind of like the whole February right now for the past, like, I feel like 3 years at least. February has been awful, in a good way for gamers, because like, hey, somewhere in this month, most of you, if you're a gamer, are probably gonna have something you want to play. Problem is, if you're trying to cover things, you're like, there's no way I'm covering it all. I probably want to cover a couple. They might overlap. I don't know what the timing is going to be like. Maybe I have something else. So it's just like, no. Like, yeah. So the timing of release schedule sometimes, that's why I always wonder, if I don't have the time as a content creator who wants to even play multiple games in the middle of a month, it's going to be fairly busy, and I'm squeezing the time in, the average gamer might get to one. So all of you that are stacking your release dates on top of each other, I have to beg the question, how many of those get lost? How many of those don't hit the audience they see? When you go check Steam numbers and stuff like that, that's like only one metric versus consoles, but still, to see certain things not released that high or whatever, it's like it's hard to find time now. There's so many at certain points when I'm like, if you just did like April, you might be fighting 2 versus 10 big releases in 1 month. That's so weird. So, well, yeah, time sometimes is bizarre.
I remember Intoria releasing, or it originally wanted to release on the same day as Shadow of the Erdtree, and that was a whole cluster.
Yeah, I think I remember that too, actually, now that you say that.
And I'm going through actually Intoria currently, and that's a fun game. I mean, I'm nowhere near the end of it at that point. I just started it, but it's one of those titles of where it's like, okay, this is not necessarily a Souls-like. Hate to burst people's bubbles. It has Souls-like elements. One? Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. Inatria? Yeah. Am I saying?
Inotria. Oh wait, I'm pronouncing it wrong. Actually, yeah, Inotria, the last
Maybe.
song.
Yeah, the last song. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking of the right game. Yeah, the Italian Souls-ish.
Yeah, what I found interesting about that is I incorporated so many different mechanics that were very unique, but very little actually Souls like content of where you had the difficult boss in the beginning. And I always have this statement of where just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's Souls like. And this is definitely one of those cases. Like it has Souls like elements, but it's not necessarily a Souls like game.
Yeah.
And they have actually an option in the menu for story, like the story version, or a Souls-like version. And they have the option to switch between that in the menu. And I'm thinking to myself, if it were actually a Souls-like, it would not be asking you anything.
No, they tend to just say you play it as is.
Which, I mean, there's an audience for that, obviously. I mean, people love the Souls and Souls-like games, and we are all masochists in that way. But it comes to an interesting point of where I think this is one of the side tangent questions I'm going to ask. What do you classify as a Souls-like game whenever it comes down to it?
Are you asking me or just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, I mean, anymore, I just call a lot of them like an action game, whether it's an action RPG. The RPG piece is going to be like an Elden Ring or a Souls, where your stats are going to go into your build, which allow you to use certain weapons, and that kind of thing is more the ARPG. Liza P went into that. Sekiro is more of an action game, but it's not going to be like Devil May Cry because the combat's still very deliberate. To where the parry is very important, your dodge is very important, your life is valuable. Then you get into things where it's like Devil May Cry, and we've got Lost Soul Aside, and I can't quite tell about Tides of Annihilation, the new one from State of Play. Those look more action, flourish, kind of Ninja Gaiden to a point. High speed, fast paced action, still tough, but done in a different way. So there's variations, and to lump everything into action RPG or lump everything into Souls-like is kind of dumb, but also, if I'm going to reference something to somebody and be like, hey, is this a Souls-like? I can be like, it's a Souls-ish. It's punishing. Like, you're going to have to be on your parry game, or you're going to have to be on your dodge game. You're going to, need to get good, as they could say. You're not going to be able to button mash your way through it, that kind of thing. So that's where I feel like the Souls piece comes from, almost the heart of, you might have a build, you might not, whether it's Souls or Sekiro, but it is to me, the style of a unforgiving game that is going to challenge your skills, probably make you want to throw a controller, but you shouldn't, but also have some of the most punishing moments, but some of the biggest fist pump moments when you actually beat some of the bosses. And I think it's that roller coaster is what makes a Souls, as opposed to always just like high speed action and fast stuff all the time. That's where it's, I think, kind of falls into a different genre to a little bit. So that's just me. It's like usually the Souls are a little bit more, and even Sekiro, I would say parrying is not slow, but it's still a more slower, deliberate game than some of the others. That's kind of where I would make the distinction for me.
Yeah. So I do have to say, to leave this podcast off on actually something that you just mentioned right now, a fist bump moment. What is the biggest fist bump moment in games that you've played?
I mean, I think I covered the Sword Saint, finishing that one already as one.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the hardest fights I think I've done. Returnal's up there, though, because beating that is... When you start, you feel so useless in Returnal. So to finally get to the end, to finally dodge everything and make it through, is quite a hell of a moment, too. So, I mean, there's those. And then also just, like, Hades... One of my favorite games, too. Hades is so fantastic. The first time you get to actually the first time you beat that and you see what happens next without saying anything, those are moments. I mean, so for big fist bump moments, yeah, it's like, the first time you wrap a roguelike, or the first time you down a final boss in any of the probably Souls games. But yeah, Nameless King was for a while. Sword Saint definitely was probably my highest. I mean, I can go back to like Mega Man, but that's old. But modern ones, Sword Saint is still one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought in my entire life. Still. Now, I don't know if there's other ones that I'm forgetting, and I need to play the Orphan and Bloodborne, but Sword Saint's a pain in the ass.
Listen, for anyone who's listening right now, Orphan of Cause is easy to parry once you get used to it. It's literally one of the easiest bosses in the DLC. There, I said it.
I think some people would argue, but nice to know you got some skills.
Funny to me, because at first that thing took me a week. Almost a week to beat at first. And then when I did the video and the pairing guide, it took me like 2 hours. So I finally got good. So, but I have to say my fist bump moments in games was definitely Ishin Sword Saint. High top of that list, because that was, oh my god, like just to see like the creature of the grandfather come out of this, it's weird. It's just a weird boss battle, but it's also so high stakes, because not only does he fight you with the spear that he has and the sword, he comes out with a gun. I didn't when I saw that, I was like, you really just pulled out a gun. That was great.
Fair.
Okay. It's not. If I can't have a gun, you shouldn't be able to have a gun either, okay, Ishin? Yeah. The other fist bump moment I have is definitely beating Hyperion, because the timing on that goes along with the music that's being played. So sometimes you're kind of locked into this part of where you have nowhere to go.
Oh, yeah. No, you're preying on some of those fights.
Yeah. And I have to say, the other one, big fist bump moment, was Smo and Ornstein from Dark Souls 1 Remastered.
Solid choice.
That was like, oh my god, I can actually like do these games and not cry.
Oh yeah. Prepare to cry, as Vati Video would say, right?
God, yeah, perfect. Actually, that's very fitting for right now. But I do have to say thank you so much, Abantis, for chilling with us tonight, for being on the podcast. It was an absolute joy to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys. And again, it's Ebantis, whether it's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Bluesky, whatever. It's EBONTIS. If you found the cheetah, you found this guy.
Well, if you guys like our faces, you guys like what we do, please be sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like, and may your coffee treat you well and life give you a nat 20. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.
Have a good one.